So this next question is about overbearing parents. And they say, my parents don't care if I'm happy, just if I'm successful. What should I do? And how can I talk to my parents? Any advice would be appreciated. And there's some other details, but I like to keep this vague to not identify anyone if that's possible, or make this applicable to anyone in the future as well. So there's a few different avenues that I can address here, and I guess I'll address kind of a mixture of them all. Being a parent, I've got 4 kids, but I also know, so the oldest child typically, and that may or may not be your case, but the oldest child will typically receive the worst type of parenting because it's the first time that they've been parents, and they really don't want their kids to get screwed up. And so they'll be very overbearing on the first child. And then as they get used to being a parent and kind of seeing, well, okay, I don't need to be this tight-fisted or heavy-handed with the child, it tends to ease up as each child grows up. So depending on where you are, you're going to feel that pressure. But it also depends on the personality of the child. Overall, though, most parents really want their children to be successful with their talents and their abilities, and to have a successful, prosperous life. And so you can't fault parents for wanting that for their children. Now, how they go about doing it can have the reverse effect, especially depending on the personality of the child. But ultimately, and we homeschool our kids, and we have the mindset that, and it took us a while to get to this point, but just like a flower grows, you want it to naturally unfold and be what it is. You can't force it. If you force it, you're going to damage it. As a parent, we provide whatever we can to give it the best environment to grow. But it sounds to me that this, you're engaged in a lot of after-school activities, and maybe your parents are overbearing, especially that you mentioned suicidal thoughts about it. And I actually gave a live stream earlier about ways to overcome that type of depression, or just depression in general. So there's that aspect of where your parents may be coming from. Now, another thing is culture. Some cultures apply massive amounts of pressure. Japanese culture and Asian cultures have a very success-driven mentality, and that does drive a very miserable wedge between the parents and the children, and it perpetuates to the next generation. And a lot of times what will happen is, if you give in to your parents' demands and just go along to get along, you will then turn around and pass that on to your kids, because that's what made you, was the pressure of being successful. And so later on in life, you'll see that success, even if you hate it because you remember how unpleasant it was to obtain it. There you find yourself, well, I'm successful, I've got a nice Mercedes-Benz, and a six-figure income and I live in a good neighborhood, all those things are great. However, you can still find yourself being miserable because of how you obtained it. Now, if you rebel against your parents and say, when I grow up, I'm not going to do this to my kids. I'm not going to, I'm not going to pressure them to do anything because I remember how miserable I was. Well, then you run into a new situation where you are going to create another problem. And that happens a lot of times. A lot of kids, children will say, I don't want to be anything like my mom. I don't want to be anything like my parents. And they either end up being exactly like them or just screwing things up in the opposite direction. So the phrase that I've heard before of letting people unfold like a flower, that really is the best environment. Now, we can't choose our parents. We don't choose our circumstances that we are raised in. And I will say, because you said you've started to have frequent suicidal thoughts, that you are a sophomore in high school, and in just a couple years, you will be able to make a lot more decisions for yourself. And life in high school is really miserable for a lot of people, but it gets better. It gets way better. And the fact that you're involved in so many things, band, football, Boy Scouts, you do sound like you're a very capable person. And even though your grades have been mostly bad, I got bad grades, relatively speaking. I didn't fail all of my classes, but I wasn't a straight A student. And some I got C's. I think I got a D in one of my classes. But unfortunately, that pressure that you're feeling, what you need to be able to do, and if you can master this technique of dealing with pressure from anyone, especially parents, because they do want good for you. They really do. Or they're trying to live vicariously through you. Regardless, this pressure that you feel that is driving you to have the thoughts of helplessness, you can overcome those feelings. And when you are able to allow those feelings to just go off your back like water off a duck's back, where they don't burden you, you will find an amazing ability that many people in life don't have. Most people cave to pressure, or they turn into being exactly like the person that pressured them. So how do you let the accusations, or not accusations, how do you let that pressure from your parents or anyone not affect you, not let it in you? Well, typically, there's a book written by a man named Clotaire Rapaille. He's a French guy, and he helps people understand how he helps corporations understand how to market to people. And he goes back to their first impression, their first imprint of something that had a very powerful emotional tie. So right now you're being imprinted with this success is the most important thing in life imprint. And it's, in a sense, hypnotizing you to react a certain way to the word success, to the word parents. If you remember, if you've seen the Willy Wonka and the Chocolate Factory with Johnny Depp, and he, every time he says or hears the word parents, like he refuses or he kind of shudders. Okay, that's right there is a sign that you've been imprinted with through emotion to behave or react in a certain way. And clearly this isn't good, sending you down a good path. So what you need to do is, because you can't change your parents, they can change themselves, but you can't change people. And it is possible. And once I learned how to do it, how to not let emotions or pressures from other people impact you, it is so amazing. And people will look at you and say, how on earth can you handle yourself and stay that cool under that pressure? Because I want you to be happy. I want everyone to be happy, truly happy. So how do you do it? And I know this is going on for kind of a while, but I really want to help you. So first, forgive your parents, because this probably happened to them. And even if it didn't, not forgiving them or judging them is just going to turn out to be bad for you. So that's the first step, is to be able to forgive your parents. The next thing is, what you want to do is, when they start pressuring you to, or starting the same old conversation that it sounds like you've been having, you need to create a barrier, a space of time between that pressure when you feel it and what would normally be your knee-jerk reaction, which sounds like you think, okay, I'm going to just immediately feel like they don't want me to be happy or whatever. Now, how do you create that gap? I've heard it put a few different ways. Some people call it praying, some people call it meditation. But what you want to do is put yourself in a meditative state, either by breathing or, and I've gotten to a point where I don't need to do that. It's just kind of like second nature. But I can get emotional where I don't think about it. So I haven't perfected it, but when I do it, it is so helpful. But if you were to close your eyes for a second and just look at the back of your eyelids, and you see kind of dots and things going around, that is all you need to create a brief period of time where you break the path of thought where it typically goes. So you have the pressure from your parents talking about, why aren't you successful? Why aren't you getting good grades? Once you break that spot, you have an opportunity to hear what is the still small voice, if you will. As the scriptures describe, the Holy Ghost. To me, it's the Holy Ghost that's telling me the answer. And it allows you to not react emotionally. A lot of times, that's all you need, is just that gap to be aware of, hey, I'm being tempted here. It really is a temptation. Lead us, just as the Lord's Prayer. I don't know if you're Christian, but Jesus offered this prayer, and a lot of people use it as a model for prayer. But Jesus said, lead us not into temptation, deliver us from evil. Not in that exact chronology, but being that temptation that we're at is to react in this negative way that sounds like you have been. And deliver us from evil. Well, the evil is this pressure that we're feeling that can drive people to suicide. So when you pray or meditate, listen to that still small voice. And sometimes just being aware of the temptation and the pressure is enough. And it's such a small and simple thing to do that it's very easy to dismiss this, but it actually works. I've had so many experiences where the right answer, if it was something that I needed to say, came to me in that way, or if it was some type of pressure or emotional thing that's persuading me, I do that, and the right way to deal with it instantly comes to me. It's amazing. It really is. And so that's my advice. It took me about 15 minutes to give it to you, but I do care about you. I do want to hear what you think. Give it a try and let me know what you think. And hopefully you have some good answers in that for you. So, but don't worry. You can make it through these 2 years of high school, which are these 2 years that you have left anyway, and life gets better. Life gets infinitely better. High school and junior high are some of the worst times for so many people. So thanks for watching. I know it was maybe a lengthy answer, but I want you to have success in life and be happy. So let me know, though. I genuinely want to know what you think. So thanks for watching. Bye.